I never really wanted to draw typefaces. I wanted to have typefaces. Working briefly as a graphic designer, it just became clear that the typefaces I wanted to use didn't exist yet. I essentially began making fonts for my own use. The fonts themselves became more interesting than the work that I was doing with them.
My father was a writer in the advertising business, and my mother did print production. I was aware that somewhere in this sequence that my parents were a part of, somebody draws the letters. I couldn't imagine who would want to do that.
I have no patience for working with ink and French curves and vellum and tracing paper and all those kinds of things. I've been a computer person my entire life. The notion that you could actually make a font, for example, and start using it that afternoon was incredibly seductive.
They can be produced far more quickly than they ever could be, but we also expect much more of them. Back in the early 90s, the field was even smaller. Bookseller catalogs would show up in the mail, and I knew that I would have to drop everything right that second, because I knew that at that moment, Jonathan was looking through the same catalog. We were always friends, even though we were technically competitors.
It became apparent in the years leading up to our formally working together in 1999 that this was a process that produced better work. I think the other part of it is there aren't that many people I've met whose opinions I value as much as Tobias's. And it's almost always the case that we both don't like something but can't decide why. I think it's helping the other person figure out what the best ideas are here and how to better articulate those. We do have a long-standing disagreement on the height of the lowercase t.
All right, there's a thing with the lowercase t. Okay.
That is the only point of contention. One of the reasons I wanted to open this company to sell typefaces is to work closely with people who consume them.
It doesn't really kind of become alive and sort of join the culture until it goes out the door.
The design of a typeface is validated by the marketplace. We never know what's going to be successful and what's not. There's a backlog of ideas that we're just itching to get the time to actually explore. There are commercial opportunities that arise, and occasionally there's a chance to pair an idea that we've already had with something somebody's asking for. We start with a capital H and a capital O. H being a typical square character, O being a typical round character. Once your H and your O have been locked down, you can design a capital D, which is half square and half round.
And just in those three letters, there are decisions about weight and about width and serifs, spacing, transitions of weight from thick to thin.
The intention of the process is always to solidify the underlying idea.
But once those are drawn, they become the foundation for what follows.
And then proceed to characters in degrees of eccentricity. E's, F's, L's, T's, I's, things made entirely of straight lines are straightforward to do. Finally, letters like Q, lowercase g, capital S, the ampersand, and then the entire backlot of weird things in a typeface, the paragraph mark, the section mark, and so on.
The challenge in the design is to coordinate those groups and to get them to work together in some dependable way.
From a single design, there's often a range of weights, a range of widths, there are italics, there are small capitals.
The process is very much about managing lots and lots of really small moving parts.
You have to simultaneously look at the micro and macro perspectives.
Every decision you make will have some kind of implication on some other aspect of that shape or on its neighbors or its relatives.
There are a lot of details. You need to be a detail-obsessive person to want to do this. Almost all of our projects take a decade, beginning to end. I think one of the reasons the typefaces take so long is we can spend years discussing why this thing doesn't feel right. It's often described entirely in terms of sort of cultural milestones. It's too Steven Seagal, not Steve McQueen enough. Rendering Steve McQueen in the form of a typeface is a fun puzzle. I never expected to be a company of this size. I didn't expect there to be 19 people working on a typeface. Ultimately, everybody in the company contributes. Many of the ideas originate with me or with Tobias, but by no means all of them. Everybody here does a little of everything, and there are certainly specialized disciplines in typeface design, in marketing, in legal, in sales and support, in technology, and so on. I've been gradually taking on more of the portfolio of other things required to run the business. Tobias and his group are more heavily weighted on the making the font side, and me and my group are on the using the font side. I thought going into this that it would be very hard to defend the need for new typefaces. They seem like an extravagance, a vanity. What I've discovered in practice is that most typefaces don't work perfectly well. With different kinds of content out in the world and the need to speak in different ways, I think there will always be a need for new typefaces.
We do this because we love this. This is really fun. It's really, really hard, but it's also really fun.
It's not impossible that typefaces made by living designers today will still be in circulation in decades or centuries to come. I hope we're that fortunate.